Hi everyone, I'm Camila Molina and this is Sabrina, and we're going to be doing training today in child development, mental health, and substance abuse in children and adolescents. The objectives for today is to increase your awareness and your knowledge about general aspects in child development, mental health, and substance abuse in children and adolescents. Like we said, that is the training, and to provide you with resources, techniques that will assist you in addressing any related issues that will arise within our population here at his house. So you have the PowerPoint with you. There are some blanks on the PowerPoint that you could fill them out as we go if you choose. If you don't want to, you don't have to do that, but that's just to keep you kind of paying attention. Okay, so we're going to start with child development. We see child development as the study of behavioral and physical changes from conception to adolescence, and adolescence is to about 19 years old. We know that changes occur over time, and they follow an orderly pattern that moves towards greater complexity and enhances survival. So what do we mean by that? Anybody?
It's like when they're born, they're fairly simple, and then they grow up like mentally and just physically as well, and they become more complex.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. So for example, when a baby's born, he's breastfeeding. As he grows up, then he's feeding himself. That has greater complexity, right? He's using more muscles, his hands, his mouth, his teeth. So every change goes on to it's more complex and enhances survival, because we know a newborn won't be able to survive if it's left alone. But a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old has better chances to survive, correct? Okay. Okay, so what do we need to know to understand child development? We break child development in 3 domains, okay? Development is described in 3 domains, like I said, but growth is within all, right? So it encompasses all 3. So as one evolves, the other ones have to evolve also for things to be, for things to be balanced, right? We can't just have a kid that grows physically, but mentally doesn't, because then that's when we have problems, like a child with autism is going to have a chronological age of 3, and it's going to have the physical appearance of a 16-year-old. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have the physical domain, which is all our physical stuff, so body size, body proportions, appearance, brain development, motor development, so all our muscles, perception capacities, and physical health. And we have our cognitive domain, which is thought process, intellectual abilities. We include that attention, memory, problem solving, imagination, creativity, academic progress, and all that good stuff. And then we have the emotional and social, and this is the self-knowledge. So when we have self-esteem, self-awareness, so aware that we're, ourselves and separate from others. But it also has that social aspect, which encompasses culture and emotional regulation and, interacting with other individuals. So any questions about domains? No? We're good? Okay. Am I going too fast? No. Okay. So within those domains, we separate development into different periods. So we have the prenatal period, which is from conception to birth. We have infancy and toddlerhood, which is from birth to 2 years. We have the early childhood, which is from 2 to 6. Middle childhood, which is from 6 to 12. And adolescence, which is from 12 to 19. So we have a quiz that Sabrina just gave you, and this is this is just like a little exercise to know kind of where your skills are at, and hopefully by the end of the training you'll be better, you'll have greater knowledge of child development. So this is just, for yourself. You could fill it out. I'll give you a couple minutes to fill that out. I'm not going to collect it, so this is just for your own knowledge and awareness. So just put whatever you think goes on there, either true or false for every question, and then we'll go over them. Okay, so I'm gonna read this out loud, and you guys could tell me if you put true or false, whoever wants to share. Okay, so for number 1, a child is expected to respond to his own name when reaching the 7th month. True, yes. Okay, second, a child may be able to pick up a toy with one hand when he or she is around 3 months. True, that is correct. Okay, for number 3, a 4-year-old does not tend to cooperate with other children. False. Yes. At 3 years old, at 4 years old, they do cooperate with others and they play together and things like that. Okay, a 4. The 3-month-old baby may be able to transfer objects from one hand to the other. That is false. So they could grasp objects at 3 months, but it's hard for them to transfer to from one hand to another. Again, these are guidelines. It's not, it's very general. So if you have a kid in your home, or if you have a kid, your own children that is not there, or, was there way before that, that's good. It's just when it goes way off, then we have to start looking, those are like red flags. But it's kind of like a general idea of where the kid should be at. Okay, 5. Reaching a seating position without help is typical in a 1-year-old. That is true. Yes, true. Okay. Number 6. By her or his 3rd birthday, a child should be toilet trained. True. Yes, that happens around 2.5. That was number 6. Okay, so number 7. A 4-year-old may be able to identify 4 colors correctly. True. Yes. Okay, number 8. Rolling over from back to stomach is expected from a 4-month-old child. That is false. It's usually at 7 months. But again, these are general guidelines, so keep that in mind. Okay, for number 9. It is only concerning if a 1-year-old is not talking by using single vowels. It is not concerning if a 1-year-old is not talking by using single vowels. It's false. It would be concerning if at 1 they don't say no, yes, all done, things like that. So number 10, a 10-month-old may be able to understand the words stop and no. True. Yes. Okay. Number 11, a 2-year-old talks clearly and is understandable most of the time. False. That's around 2.5 we really start to understand them. Okay, number 12, a 7-month-old child usually plays social games as peekaboo.
True.
False. Yes. A little bit later. Okay. So hopefully by the end of the training, you'll have a better understanding of child development, and you'll be able to know all that stuff better. And we'll give you a chart that gives you a lot more information on that. Okay, so now we're going to go over something that's called the Ages and Stages Questionnaire. Okay, so this is a tool for, like it says, it's a questionnaire, and it's used for developmental and social emotional screening for children from 1 month to 5.5 years old. So it accurately highlights children who have developmental and social emotional delays, and it excludes everyone else. It's provided in English, Spanish, and I think now they also have it in French. I have to add that into the PowerPoint. It's specially tailored for this age group. So each age group is going to have a different questionnaire. I'm not going to give you one that is from 1 month to 5.5 years. You know, each questionnaire is different for every age group and different months also. Now, why are we giving you this? So this is something that it's court mandated sometimes. And for those of you who are working in the homes or at the schools, you will be the one filling this out because it's to be filled out by the caregivers. I think I have that on the other slide. So each questionnaire takes approximately 10 to 30 minutes to complete, and it has specific questions that can be answered by parents or caregivers. So this is specifically for those who are taking care of the children, because it's difficult for a therapist or a psychologist or any person in charge of the child to be able to grasp what the child is doing in 1 hour span or 2 hours that we see them. But for you guys that are living with the children, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, then you get to see a lot more of how they're interacting, how they're behaving, their development, if they're, wetting their bed at night, if they're chewing on crayons and they're 4 years old. Those things are important to know, and it's hard for therapists to see that within 1 hour of a session that we usually do. So we're gonna go, you'll have this one, right? Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit over this. The questionnaire is divided in 5 different areas. We have communication, we have gross motor skills, we have fine motor skills, problem solving, and personal and social. Okay, so we're gonna go into each area. So for communication, we have language. When we're talking about language, we're not only talking about spoken language, but also gesture or sounds. When you have 7-month-old or a 1-year-old that says "ma, ma," that's mom, right? He's calling out for mom. He's not necessarily saying "mom" or "I want my mom," but that those vowels those sounds represent something specific. We also speak about gestures, and when we talk about communication, we rely on 2 different skills. We have receiving and expressing information. So for the child to be able to understand what you're saying, and for also to communicate what he needs or she needs. Okay. Then we have gross motor skills, where it's with big muscles. So we're talking about our torso, our legs, our arms. All this movement falls under gross motor skills. Then we have fine motor skills, which is the smaller muscles, so our fingers, our wrists, and our hands. So, for example, what would be something that could be done with a fine motor skill, or would be defined as a fine motor skill? Like writing would be a fine motor skill. Running would be a gross motor skill. See the difference? So standing up for a baby would be under gross motor skill. Picking his nose when he's little, that would be fine motor skill. Okay? Then we have problem solving. We know that there's obstacles throughout life, so problem solving is being able to overcome an obstacle and achieve a desired goal. So for a baby, that would look like being able to crawl and grasp an object, or if he's sitting in a high chair, grasping those Cheerios, or opening a lid to something so he could grasp the Cheerios. That would be fall under problem solving. And then for personal and social, we have conditions of possessing the social, emotional, and intellectual skills and the behaviors needed to succeed as a member of society. So that would be kind of also going in with communication, being receptive, showing emotion, having, different affects, so showing, sadness, happiness when you're smiling and things like that. So he's receptive to those social cues. So now everyone has a child development chart from the first 5 years of life. And it's divided in 5 different sections. We have social, self-help, gross motor, fine motor, and language. And if we go back to the slide, we know that is the same domains that we see here. The only difference is that social and self-help, which would be under personal and social, are divided in 2 different sections. So we have the self-help would be the personal, and then social would be the social, like it says on the ages and stages questionnaire. This chart will give you some ideas of where the child should be at a certain stage of life. For example, 6 months, they should be reaching for familiar persons, like putting their hands out and things like that. But again, just keep in mind that these are all guidelines of where the child should be at, but by no means does it mean that if a child hasn't reached a certain stage, by that exact time, that the child is delayed or advanced. It just gives you some general rules of where the child should be at. Okay, so we'll have a 15-minute break now.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Sosa, and I am a UAC clinician, and we would like to thank you once again for participating in today's training. As we commence with part 2 of the training, we will be speaking on mental health. So the first question I have for you all is, what is mental health? What is it? What is mental health? What it comes to your mind? What words pop up? Yes.
Your mental state.
Your mental state, very good. What else?
Brain development.
Brain development, what else?
Your mental situation.
Yes, different situations that go on in the mind. Very good. So a person's condition with regard to their psychological, emotional, and social well-being. This is mental health. It involves those 3 aspects: psychological, emotional, and social. It affects how we think, how we feel, and act as we cope with life. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, not just for children, but for adolescents and adults as well. It's all even. And so, from childhood to adolescence through adulthood, you are constantly dealing with mental health, and we wanted to run a few facts by you. Did you know an estimated, in your PowerPoint handouts, you will see blanks. This is the first blank. It's an estimated 15 million of our nation's young people can currently be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. That's 15 million of our nation's young people. In the US, they can be currently like today, diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And this figure is shocking. More facts. Nationwide, which you will see on the next slide in your handout, approximately 510,000 children and youth are in the foster care system. Studies since the 1970s have found that children in foster care have a greater need for mental health treatment than children in the general population. Later on, we will discuss why this is. And so, typical findings are higher prevalence of developmental delays, conduct problems, language difficulty, attachment disorders, behavioral problems, and neurological impairments. Now, most of you are childcare professionals and you're on the front lines with the children. And so you will see the developmental delays. You will experience the conduct disorders. And many more are at risk of developing a disorder due to risk factors, which we will speak on, in their biology or genetics within their families, schools, and communities, and among their peers. However, it is estimated that only about 7% of these youth who need services receive appropriate help from mental health professionals. Okay? It's crazy that out of those 510,000 children in foster care, that 7% of these youth who need services receive appropriate help from mental health professionals. And as we were in the other, 15 million of that youth in the US who can be diagnosed today with a mental health disorder, 7% are receiving appropriate services. So what does that tell you? That you will be dealing with a lot of children with developmental delays, conduct disorders, problems, and it all stems from different risk factors. What causes mental health disorders? What do you think causes? Can anybody? Emotional stress, bondage. What else?
Bullying.
Bullying can cause mental health disorders. What else? Abuse causes mental health disorders. So let's go ahead and look at some of those common risk factors. Parental substance abuse. Just because the child themselves is not taking the substance, when the parent abuses the drug, the child is affected, and whoever is in the household is affected. So parental substance abuse is definitely a risk factor, including domestic violence, children witnessing their parents fighting physically, emotionally, verbally, child abuse and neglect, when the child is directly impacted physically, emotionally, and mentally by the parents or by caregivers, siblings, other children, at school, in the community, homelessness and poverty, family factors, behavioral problems, and genetics. These are all common risk factors of mental health disorders. Side effects in children. We have a few different side effects that are most common, which are anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, adjustment disorders, bipolar disorder, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, ADD and ADHD, and substance abuse. These are the side effects that are caused by these common risk factors. Okay, so it is you're gonna see most of your kids are really dealing with a lot of deep issues in their hearts, in their minds, socially. You're dealing with a very risky population, and you're doing a great work. In that, I wanted to remind you that never forget the population you are working with and what each is going through. Many times you're going to be tempted by these children. They will test your waters. They will test you. They will tempt you to lash out. They know what's going to hurt you. Hurt people hurt people. So if they've been wounded and they've been hurt, which all of them who are here have been hurt, they are going to lash out sometimes, and they are going to try to hurt you. And they are going to test to see if they can trust you or not. They are going to test you for your word. Did that person lie to me? Or are they, they're always going to be, they're going to be spiteful. They're going to act out. So don't forget the population that you work with. These kids all have their own story. Not everybody deals with things different ways. Some have greater dispositions than others, and some have been through more severe or traumatic circumstances than others. But they're all children who are at risk and who have been through trauma. Noticing mental health disorders in children is very important, and we wanted to play a video for you now.
I'd say for parents to really get to know their child. And they can do that by many ways, by spending quality time with them, having a conversation with them to find out what their feelings and their thoughts are. This way it gives parents like a before and after, so you have an idea of what's my child normally doing on an everyday basis, and then getting to know them after a while if there's something going on currently that it gives the parent a little bit of a warning sign to say, you know what, there might be something up with my child or something bothering my child. The things that you want to look into, there's various warning signs that you can look into, and I'm just going to talk about 5 of them today. So the first thing you want to look into with your child is sleep. Now, is your child getting enough sleep at night, say before school? Or is your child up at night tossing and turning in bed? So that's one of the first things that you want to look into. The second one you want to look into is appetite. Basically, is your child eating more or less at the dinner table or even during lunchtime? Next thing you want to look into is relationships that your child has with either with classmates or with teachers or even other adults. So is the child quite engaging with these individuals, or are the parents noticing that their child is withdrawing from certain people that he or she is used to seeing them engage with? The fourth thing you want to look into is academics, and that's usually a big thing for parents. So the main thing you're looking at are my child's grades drastically changed over the years? And that's usually a good warning sign, because it gives parents an idea that, you know what, not only am I noticing something at home, but it seems to be affecting them at school. And the fifth and last one that you would look into is basically a child's health. So is your child or is your teen looking or making physical complaints such as frequent headaches, stomach aches, or even nausea? And if so, I really suggest parents to make an appointment with their family doctor to have it looked and checked into. I find that there are a lot of parents who just feel stuck and have no idea where to go or even where to start. So what I would encourage parents to do is, before even looking into any professional help, is to really take the time to communicate your feelings to your child and basically let them know what their concerns are. I'd encourage parents to piece the information that they've received from their child, such as the verbal information or the nonverbal pieces of information, and combine it to whatever they've seen in their child, whether it's acting out or just behaving inappropriately, and just let them know that, I am concerned about this and I want to support you in any way. That could be very important for a child, because it lets them know that, I don't have to go through this process on my own. I have my mom and my dad by my side.
Thank you so much for watching that video. Does anyone have any questions about it so far? No questions. Okay, so I did want to mention a few things regarding this video that you just saw. Sleep. Many times there are sleep disturbances, there are sleeping disorders, there are all kinds of aspects related to sleep when it comes to mental health. By a raise of hands, how many of you have ever had sleeping problems? You can't get to sleep, you're too stressed out, or you wake up too early, or you're waking up in the middle of the night. See, it's very common amongst you. So a child who has experienced trauma, many times there's bedwetting, many times there's nightmares happening, there's many times they don't want to go to sleep, many times they're afraid, they're not getting enough sleep, or they want to just sleep all the time. These are all different symptoms of different sleeping disorders, but sleep can tell you a lot, and it's very important for not just children, but even adults to get a sufficient amount of sleep to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Appetite. Appetite is affected. A lot of times during depression, there can be emotional overeating or there can be undereating. They're loss of appetite, or it's very important to notice these things. Notice the norms of your children. What is normal for them? Oh, you know what? They've been eating differently this week. What's going on? Are they having an eating disorder, or are they depressed, or are they anxious? they've been overeating, what's happening. So it's very important that you take notice in the patterns of eating and sleeping that your children have. Relationships. Maybe you're starting to see a kid get very aggressive towards others, or maybe you're seeing him get easily irritated. So these are great questions to ask yourself about your kids, their relationships with others. You know what? He's not as friendly as he used to be, or she is a little too friendly with everybody, a little too dependent, a little too clingy. There's something happening here. So getting to the heart of it and what's happening with your kids, and observing their relationships with the other peers in the home and with the staff. Maybe they've been very defiant. Maybe they've been very disrespectful with the adults. But any kind of change that you notice. Now, if this is something that's constant, it's very likely that the child is experiencing some kind of disorder. But if you see it always constant, but if you know the kids that you work with, you get to know them, you love them, you care for them. So you start to get to know how they are, their personality, their character. And so through these things, you know your children. I wanted to also bring up academics. A lot of times you'll have periods where, okay, these children who are coming into care, they are extremely unstable. Their whole life has been turned upside down. It was not their choice to be here. Children do not volunteer to bring themselves to this place. They don't volunteer that. They don't say, hey, take me away from my home. Everything I've ever known, just take me away. For the most part, most children do not do that. It's very rare if they do. But even children today here, all of them, you ask them, where would you like to live right now? Where would you like to be? It doesn't matter what they went through, what abuse. Most of them will tell you, I want to go home. I want to be with mom. I want to be with dad. Doesn't matter what they went through. Because at the end of the day, those children love their parents unconditionally. It doesn't matter what their parents do. They may be angry. They may be upset. Maybe they hate them. But at the end of the day, it's their family. It's what they've always known. So sometimes, don't let it be a surprise to you if you see that these children do want to be reunited. They do want to reconcile with their parents, and they would like to be with them again. Now, a lot of these children will also experience great disappointment from their parents even while residing in care here. For example, when they have family visits, the family visits, sometimes the parents don't show up. And the kid is waiting all month. I'm going to see my mom. I'm going to see my mom. And when, sure enough, the day gets here and a sibling group of 5, mom is nowhere to be found. So these things will disappoint the kids. You will see a behavioral change in that child that same day. You will see a change of mood, a change of affect. So when they get home, it's very important you know about your kids and how to cope and how to help them cope and deal with their issues, because many times they will be disappointed, even right here with things that have happened. Maybe they went to court and they were very disappointed with the way that things turned out or the way that their parents responded. Maybe they were expecting a phone call from mom or dad or uncle, and they never received that phone call. So maybe they did talk to their parents through their case managers, and they learned some news that really just brought them down. So it's very important that you're involved in that child's life and ask them questions and really care about their well-being in caring for them and asking questions. It's okay to ask them questions, and it's okay to care for them. That's what we're here for, and we definitely encourage you to know your children and know their personalities and how they are and what's normal for them and what's not. So in academics, you will see a change when academics greatly reflect on a child's, their perspective, their viewpoint, the way they see school, the way they see the world, the way they see family. When a child is doing very bad in school, there are reasons for that. Their lack of motivation, what do I have to live for? Or, there's a lot of low self-esteem, there's bullying, all these things that affect children's academics. So it's very important to motivate kids about school, asking them questions about school and how they can get help. Many of these kids need a tutor, or they need help with their homework, or they just need that extra support and motivation, and you're never giving it in vain. Even if they don't take the support you're giving them, it's never in vain. So we really commend you for pushing those kids to do their best. Health. Physically, a lot of times headaches, migraines, stomach aches, feeling nauseous. A lot of times there are emotional sicknesses that end up coming out physically, and that's psychosomatic. So it's very important that you observe everything from the behavior to the health, academics, relationships, appetite, sleep, everything that we just learned. So we are going to be discussing a few different disorders just to give you the gist of it. Each child should have a therapist. Every child in foster care should have a therapist assigned to them. And if they have a therapist assigned to them, and every child in foster care most likely has a mental health disorder. When they have a therapist, they have a mental health disorder. So it is important that you know how. If I'm taking care of this child, I need to know what it is, what are the symptoms that I'm going to be seeing, what's normal, what's not normal, so that you can know how to deal with these symptoms, so that you can be trained in, okay, if I see this, I know it's because of this, and I am supposed to respond this way. Just like in general, if you don't know how to use a camera, you're not going to be able to use it. You're not going to be able to get the benefits out of it properly. You need to know your kids. Well, what is this kid struggling with? It's very important as childcare professionals that you do have a relationship with the case manager, and you can communicate that information to the case manager. Look, this child is acting up this week. I don't know what's going on, but I just want to relay that information to you. Maybe you can let their therapist know. It's also important that the therapists talk to you as well, because the therapists are with children max 1 to 3 hours a week. Usually it's on average 1. If it's T-Boss, it's 2 hours a week, which is an exception. But 1 to 2 hours is average for a therapist to see a child in foster care. And even if that, because it's very difficult in the stability of the schedule for that to be so consistent. The therapist has to work really hard in order to make sure they see that child once a week. So, with that said, I just wanted to let you know that you have a right to have a relationship with the case manager, with the therapist, and it's very important that you're communicating the behaviors of the child at home with the case manager, that they know what's going on. You're with them most of the time. You are with the child most of the time, so you know that child more than anybody at the time that they're in care, okay? And so it's very important that you do relay all the information, any changes that you see, or anything that is of concern, using your own discernment, your instinct. You know what? This child, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel like something is off. Of course, you're not there to diagnose them, but you are there to make observations and to let your concerns and observations be known. Let the case manager, let your supervisors know, let the case manager know, look, this is what's happening with this child. You know, I'm seeing this, and that. I wanted to make sure you had this information. So that's very important, okay? I wanted to emphasize that. So now we're going to discuss anxiety and what it looks like, just so you have an idea of, you know, what is this and what it should look like and the symptoms when you're in the home with the children. Anxiety is excessive worry or fear. There's worst case scenario thinking. A lot of times there's irrational thoughts like, oh my gosh, but what if I cross the street and a car just comes and runs me over? And it's very difficult for them to continue in life, and it's impairing their daily functioning. Agitation, fidgeting, restlessness, specific phobias. Some people have really specific phobias, like, you know what, I'm scared of clowns, any clown, you know, that doll that's a clown freaks me out. This movie, oh my gosh, I just saw a flash of a clown. I mean, people have specific phobias, and a phobia is very serious. It's traumatic for somebody. Some people have it of spiders, others of,
Doors.
Yes, exactly. There's all kinds of different phobias that exist, and we have to be sensitive to the children. And if there is a phobia, we are not to minimize it and say, oh, stop being silly. There, you need to know if there's a phobia, then, not to minimize it, and making sure that you're treating the child with respect and proper communication when it comes to this phobia and how to deal with it. If you're with the kids and you don't know how to help them, then there's a problem. And if you don't know how to help them, you gotta ask whoever you need to ask, your supervisor, talk to the case manager, ask the therapist, what would you like us to implement in the homes, okay? Some of the kids have a safety plan, and there's also like specific behavior management plans for some of the kids, so it's very important that you know about these plans, you revise these plans, and you know your part in this, okay? So there's also irritability and when they're cranky, difficulty with focus or concentration, panic attacks or panic. During a panic attack, the heartbeat increases, and there you can get sweaty palms, you can start sweating, you basically freak out. And it can come at any time. There's not like a specific time it comes, it can just come randomly. It can happen to an adult, it can happen to a child, but a panic attack is a symptom of severe trauma. So there's also obsessive thoughts or behaviors. There are also like different symptoms of anxiety as well, include like picking at your skin, pulling your hair, like tapping your leg, like restlessness. So there's different symptoms, but you will see that with your children. Sometimes you will experience different things. That doesn't mean that they have anxiety disorder, but they may be experiencing symptoms of anxiety. And this is something that, case manager, you should always let the case manager and therapist know, and then the therapist will let you know how to help these kids, how to behave with them in your trainings as well, and your supervisor. So we're gonna move on to depression, so you can know symptoms about this and what it is. It's a significant disturbance in mood. Sometimes people will be depressed and you don't even know it. They have a flat affect and you wouldn't know. You would not know unless this child revealed it to you, but there's a lot of times that you can see through symptoms. And some of these symptoms include sadness, crying episodes, hopelessness, talk about wanting to die, talk about hopelessness, oh, I don't care, it's not like anyone cares about me, or, different things. Don't take it lightly when a child speaks that way. Out of the mouth flows the abundance of the heart. There are reasons why kids say certain things. If they're not just springing it out of the air, it's because they really are feeling this way. Things really are coming out where, they're feeling inside a certain way, but we are not to dismiss it, and we are not to just minimize their feelings, but we are to affirm them, to empathize, and to communicate this information to those who are helping them therapeutically. We also have changes in eating or sleeping patterns, as we discussed. Withdrawal, isolation from friends and activities. A lot of times you'll see the loner, the kid who just wants to be alone the whole time. And that is a symptom of depression. And it breaks my heart when I see kids, and then it's dismissed. Like everybody just ignores it. Oh, that's just the way he is. That may be the way he's being, but there are reasons for that. That's a symptom of a deeper root issue. And so there's also loss of interest, energy, or motivation. They just don't want to do anything. Fatigue, they're always tired, and they have no reason to be tired. They're just always tired, or they always want to take a nap, always want to go to sleep. Feeling guilty, worthless, or bad about oneself. You'll hear them even making comments like, no, I don't look good enough, or no, that's okay, nobody likes me anyway, or negative. Anything negative that comes out of the mouth, it's very important to address those things, because it's the little things that add up. That's a root issue going on there. Difficulty concentrating, increased agitation or aggression, and suicidal ideation or attempts. It's very important that we ask the kids. It's very important, because sometimes just because they don't say it doesn't mean they're not thinking it, or doesn't mean they don't feel it. It's very important to ask a child. Even if you think they're playing around, a lot of times I've heard, oh, they're just saying that. don't take it for granted. You never, there's a reason why that was said. Don't take it for granted. Even if they don't do it, they don't end up doing it, it's better for us to take precautious measures. That is not something that we are to be passive about. It's very crucial and very important. A kid won't always make comments. Sometimes they, just go into the action. But it's very, very important that immediately, that you ask questions and that you report it appropriately. Okay? Now we're going to look into very common mental health disorders in children. And this video is just a few minutes. So please bear with me as I get this opened for you.
Anxiety disorders and depression are the most common in childhood and adolescence. Well, anxiety and depression get talked about together because they often occur together and they have some overlap, especially in kids and teens. In children and teens, they'll often have components of both, or the way that anxiety and depression gets demonstrated in children and teens can look a lot the same, because it can be things like irritability, physical complaints, headaches, stomach aches, anger, moodiness, temper tantrums, things like that. In teens, it can be kind of isolating themselves or withdrawing. So a lot of the behaviors kind of have a lot of overlap. They can be indicative of anxiety or depression. It's not just people think of anxiety as outright worries and fears, which it can be. They think of depression as someone who's sad and crying, which it can be, but it can also be all these other kinds of behaviors. It does depend on the disorder for sure. With the most common ones, so with ADHD, it is that really high activity level, a lot of trouble paying attention, real impulsivity, acting without thinking. But again, all little kids are like that. So it's when it's way beyond what's typical for their age and when it's getting in the way. With things like anxiety and depression, like I said, it's sometimes overt, it's in your face. They're unhappy, they're scared, they're refusing to go to school because they're so worried. They particularly feel fearful of social situations and they won't go, they won't do things, they won't engage in things. But like I said, in kids and adolescents, the tricky part is really watching for those subtle indications that do get mistaken for, oh, it's just behavior. He's just an obnoxious teen. He's just behaving badly, when there could be something more to it. So it's watching for those other things that can indicate, and watching for in teens things like they may turn to drug and alcohol use, not just because they're being rebellious, but because they're trying to cope with something. So it's really knowing, it's having adults who know the child or the teen well, so they can tell when something is out of character or when something is changing, and gathering more information and taking a closer look.
Okay, that concludes that video. Something that I wanted to bring up regarding this video is, mental health disorders. So a mental health disorder, when you have a disorder mentally, you can't help it. Even if you want to help it, the symptoms, everything that comes out, you can't help it. It's a disorder that you have. You can't change it. And a lot of kids are on medication, on psychotropic medications, because they need a physical supplement to be able to alter their mind and their hormones and different functions in the body so that they can function properly. Now, a lot of times you think, all they have to do is just do this and they'll be fine, or just behave. If they can't do that. Children with mental, that's why it's very important that you even know what, the child that you're caring for, what they have. How are you going to care for them if you don't know what you're dealing with? So a child who is suffering from a mental health disorder, which most of the children you're caring for do, it's important for you to also have an understanding that they can't help those symptoms. They can't help those behaviors. These are symptoms, these are things that are these are effects of the disorder. This is what's coming out. Now, of course, that does not excuse the behavior. Of course, that does not make it right or okay. Of course, there are consequences to bad behavior. I'm sure you have the behavior management plan in the home, and there are consequences. There's a reward system. There's the token economy. There's different ways of handling behavior. But consequences need to occur, whether it's good or bad. There's good consequences for good behavior, bad consequences for bad behavior. And so the children, I just want to make sure you understand that the children cannot help these symptoms that occur when they have disorders. So it also puts you in a position to like be compassionate, to be loving, and to just really have more of an understanding of where they're coming from and how they, there are a lot of things that they can help. So we're going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. That is the abbreviation. This is when trauma was experienced or witnessed with physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. A lot of people easily, oh yeah, physical, sexual abuse, but I want you to notice in here, emotional abuse. Yes, you can be emotionally abused and it could have devastating effects and cause PTSD. So just because you can't see what's in the heart, just because you can't see emotions or feelings, it can cause a mental health disorder to have emotional, verbal abuse. Okay? And so physical, sexual, emotional abuse, it doesn't even have to be something that they experience themselves. For example, Daddy never hit me. He never abused me, but he abused Mom, and I would see it all the time. That is traumatic when you see physical abuse occurring in front of you, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional. Okay? So even being a witness of this can cause trauma. Some kids have more resilience than others. So it's, they looks from the outside that they're coping better with it. For example, this child here has witnessed the same thing that this child witnessed, but how come this one has PTSD and this one doesn't? Well, there's resilience, and that is when you're able to bounce back up from a traumatic situation rather quickly or very well. But that doesn't mean everybody has that, and it's by the grace of God that kid even has that resilience, because it's very traumatic and it's very devastating to a person. It doesn't matter who you are. It's very devastating to see any kind of abuse, to witness that or to go through it. So children have different resiliences, and that's why some you will see that have, what appear to be greater effects than others, or mental health disorders, or everybody responds differently. Maybe that child didn't get PTSD, but maybe they received, got bipolar disorder from it. Like, everybody responds differently. So, domestic violence, civil unrest, or war, like a lot of veterans come back from the war with PTSD of things that they witnessed or things that they themselves experienced. Natural disasters also cause trauma. Something that happens so suddenly or over a period of time can cause great devastating effects. So there's also fear, helplessness, horror. That's what a child is feeling when they experience PTSD. Recurrent thoughts or images, they just can't help but to keep remembering all those things that occurred. Nightmares, they wake up in the middle of the night, remembering past things that happened or the same incident, in their dreams. Reliving the experience. They can have flashbacks. There can be things that just all of a sudden will completely trigger whatever it was they experienced. It could be 10 years ago, it could be 5 years ago, it doesn't matter how much time. PTSD is very serious, and it's not measured as far as like, oh, well, that's okay. Well, you know what, you shouldn't have PTSD anymore, you've had it for 20 years. So, there's no timetable here. Everybody is different, and everybody receives differently and responds differently and feels differently and has been through a different circumstance. Emotional distress, they will be greatly emotionally disturbed, and avoidance, like trying to avoid anything that will trigger that. There are times that I've seen children have a breakdown for something that you didn't think was anything. You're still trying to break your head on why did this child respond like that to this situation. But when you sit down and you talk to this child, it surprised me to learn, wow, because this triggered their memory of such and such that happened to them, that their family did to them. So it's amazing when like things come out, things are revealed. It's absolutely amazing to see, you know, oh wow, everything has a reason, everything has a purpose. So a lot of children do go through, this is a very common disorder with children in foster care. Adjustment disorder. Remember that these children did not come by choice. They did not volunteer to be here. They were removed from everything they've ever known and boop, placed in the foster care system. Placed in a home where they know absolutely nobody, trust absolutely nobody, like absolutely nobody, and it's not familiarity to them. They are in a place that's completely brand new. The world has been switched upside down. Just for a moment, just imagine you being taken out of your circumstance today, where you work, where you live, everything, being put, let's just say, another country, where you know absolutely nobody, you have no idea what you're doing, you don't know where your life is going to go. You were just dropped there. That's kind of what they feel. Now, of course, we try to ease that process, and, you know, the state provides different services and things to help, but that's basically what these children go through, is they're removed from everything they've ever known and put into somewhere completely unfamiliar and different. So it's very traumatic for this to happen to anybody. So they go through an adjustment disorder. Many of them go through this. And even after 3 months, there are many children who won't adjust, or, you know, instability with school, instability with where they live, instability with knowing what's going to happen in the future. Some kids go from foster home to foster home to foster home, back over here to another foster home, back over here. So it's very common for children to travel from home to home, placement to placement. Maybe they were reunified, but something happened again and they were placed back in, you know, to our care. So there's all different kinds of situations. Are there any questions so far regarding this? Okay. So there's also, in adjustment disorder, emotional behavior disturbance that occurs as a result of a significant adjustment. Even, there could be adjustment disorder even with a child, let's say they weren't moved placements. Let's just say they were moved schools. There could be an adjustment disorder that develops from that because it was traumatic to them. It just depends on the circumstance, on the person. And so there's tantrums, there's anxiety in this, there's anger, these are all symptoms. Restlessness, insecurity, fear of now, fear of the future. So adjustment disorder is very difficult, and it is very hard for the children, especially when they arrive, even after some time, not knowing what's going to happen. Instability is emotionally, mentally, socially. What, like you said, one moment it could be totally fine for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month they've been fine. All of a sudden, something happened. Something was triggered. Or maybe they really are coping now. Maybe it's really kicking in for them now. So you don't know where that child is exactly in their heart, in their mind. It could be anything. Anything can just trigger, or maybe it just reality kicked in. Like the risk factors we spoke about. All these things will have effects. It's not a matter of will it have effects. It's when will it have an effect, because it will affect the child. It would affect anybody. So adjustment disorder. These are some of the symptoms that are involved with it, and so a therapist would be the one that would, you know, go over the criteria. This is not the criteria, these are just symptoms, but the therapist is the one who evaluates the child, and during that evaluation and through time of seeing them, they will see different symptoms, and they will be diagnosing them according to the criteria in the mental health book. But it's something that it's very serious, and it could be borderline. Maybe they don't meet the criteria, but they have a lot of these symptoms, and maybe mixed and emotions, and everything is in there. So it's very important that we are observant of these symptoms, and once again, I'm going to emphasize this, communicating this to the person giving them therapeutic services and their case manager. What should you do? Okay. Depression and anxiety related behaviors, PTSD, and adjustment disorder specifically. Always stay calm. This sounds like a given, but you'd be so surprised how many people do not stay calm during an episode or during. So it's remember to stay calm. Never go to the level, like if the child is up here emotionally and acting out, never go to that level, but your job is to de-escalate the situation by staying calm, by speaking quietly. They could be screaming off the top of their lungs, but don't meet them there. Bring them down here. Don't scream with them, because it's not going to help. Your job is to de-escalate, so if they're up here, you stay right here. No matter where they go, you stay right here. And you'll see. They'll slowly start de-escalating and coming down. And they're going to see. Children know when you care. They know when they feel respected by you or not. And that's something that I've seen with a lot of children. Every child wants respect. Every child wants to trust. They've come from broken homes. They've come from broken trust, broken everything. So, don't be surprised if when they're here, they do not trust you. Yes, you will be tested. Yes, they will tempt you. They will try to hurt you. But remember that you are here to offer them the stability that they've never had. You're here to offer them care. Care like they've never seen. Love like they've never experienced. Okay? So with that, this is a faith-based organization. It's Christian, and I would like to emphasize, pray for your kids, pray with your kids, and love them and care for them and just love them. So encourage them, empathize with them, help them to have stability. I want to say something about keeping your word. Okay, a lot of kids take you so literal and so serious. Many kids are very literal. What you say, your word is your bond. If you said we were going to have snack time and we didn't have snack time, they're going to hold you accountable to that. They will, oh, well, you said we were having snack. They know all these things. They hear what you're saying, and then subconsciously as well, they're already developing respect. And that respect, as long as you're keeping your word, that respect will keep building. The moment you don't keep your word, what happens? The respect will go down. Their respect for you will go down. And so when I say keep your word, of course, things happen. You're not always going to, you promised to go to the park. Letting them know with proper communication. Most problems occur because of a lack of communication or communicating incorrectly or not communicating. For example, Billy, you told Billy, yes, we're going to go to the park today, but then you realized the weather was horrible. Instead of having Billy ask you, and it's your responsibility that once you know you're not going to the park anymore, you tell little Billy, Billy, you know what? I know that I told you we were going to the park, but I'm looking at the weather and it's not going to permit us to go today. But this is what we're going to do. Or, we'll go to the park such and such day if the weather is okay. I wanted to take you, but, and then, if they have a tantrum, then that's a whole different story. They're disappointed. They don't know how to deal with, disappointment. But they are going to respect you because you communicated with them. You let them know you were accountable, even though you weren't able to complete that promise. And always be careful with promises. Always that if we can, oh yes, we're going to do this. I'm going to try my best. That's a very good phrase to use. I'm going to try my best for that to happen. They know when you care. And they know when you try your best. They know when you're being real. And they know when you're not. So kids know. And they have very good discernment. So they will test you. But always keep open communication with them. Talk to them. Communicate with them. And don't wait on them to come to you. You show them. You communicate with them. And keep your word. If you say something, go through with it. Let's say that you had promised a consequence. You know what? Because you did this, this is the consequence. But let's say all of a sudden they start behaving better. Okay, that better will receive another reward, but your consequence is still coming for the bad behavior. Don't drop it. Don't let it go. It's the little things. And little by little, those little things start becoming big things. So always keep your word. If you said you were going to do something, do it as far as it's in your power. If you can, of course, you explain to them, why it can't be done. But always keep your word and build that trust. Trust and closeness are the two healthy components of a healthy relationship. Trust and closeness. Closeness not in proximity, but in heart, where you're close. You don't have to live in the same area, or closeness in the heart. Okay? So providing a normalcy for them, stability. Kids need structure, they need stability, they need rules, they need consequences, they need, love, care, compassion. Call your supervisor immediately if you hear of any self-harming statement or see any self-harming behaviors. Immediately contact your supervisor and just make sure that the case manager and the therapist is also copied on that. Okay? So, bipolar disorder. Some of the things it involves, just so you have an idea, are depressive episodes. Depressive episodes and manic episodes. One moment they can be extremely hyper and talkative and excited and about something and have an interest, and then a week later, they're completely different. Now, just because one kid is one way this week and one way that week doesn't mean he's bipolar. Of course, there's a whole criteria to it in the diagnosis, but depressive episodes, manic episodes, elevated mood, usually for 1 week or more. These are symptoms of bipolar disorder. So there's inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, or they're on top of the world, and then there's also decreased sleep, excessively talkative, overactive physically or mentally, irritable, distracted, racing thoughts, significant increase in risky behaviors, stealing, substance abuse, sexually acting out. These are all different symptoms that are involved in bipolar disorder. Something else too, I want to mention psychotropic medications. It is very important that you be aware of all of the medications that the children are taking for mental health. It's of the milligrams of everything, all of the details. If the child runs out of medication, if they haven't received the medication that was prescribed, these are all things that are extremely important for a child to have their medication when as prescribed by the doctor, by the psychiatrist. So that's very important that there's an open line of communication and that everyone is aware. When is the next medical prescription refill due? And all of those details, making sure that when they have psychotropic medications, they are receiving them as necessary. Okay? Conduct disorder. Conduct disorder includes aggressive behavior, and these are behaviors that threaten or cause physical harm and may include fighting, bullying, being cruel to others or animals, using weapons, and forcing another into sexual activity. That's one part of conduct disorder. Another part is destructive behavior that involves intentional destruction of property, such as arson, burning things, vandalism, harming property. These very destructive behaviors. Deceitful behavior, which includes repeated lying, shoplifting, breaking into homes or cars in order to steal. And we also have the violation of rules in conduct disorder. This involves going against accepted rules of society or engaging in behavior that is not appropriate for the person's age. Of course, all of these different disorders have the criteria, like a certain amount of time that they needed to have all these symptoms for, and ages that are appropriate. So there's really specific, but these are symptoms just so you have an idea of different mental health disorders. And so these behaviors may include running away, skipping school, playing pranks, or being sexually active from a very young age. Oppositional defiant disorder, you will see this as well. This is when a child has some serious issues respecting their authority figures. And so it's a frequent loss of temper, argues with adults. It can be teachers, it can be staff, it can be any primarily adults. Defiant, non-compliant, deliberately annoying people, trying to get on your nerves, trying to get under your skin, blaming, angry, resentful, spiteful, and a common occurrence of these symptoms. Is oppositional defiant disorder is also known as ODD. That's the abbreviation, ODD. So we also have ADD/ADHD. There's inattention, kids, who are daydreaming, zoning out, can't be still in their chair, impulsive, acts out, without thinking, interrupting, difficulty waiting their turn. Immediately, everything has to be now. Very hyper, agitated, restless, talkative, playful. Adults have all these disorders are, there's for children and adults as well. So these are some of the symptoms of ADD, and this is a very, very, it's mostly common with children in foster care. Like, this is like the most common disorder in foster care with children at risk. It's ADD. So the question is, what should you do? Always let your supervisor know of everything, always. But make sure that this information is being communicated to case managers and therapists. The children cannot get the proper help and the attention needed in services if nobody's aware. So because you're on the front lines, you're the ones primarily with the children, you're on the front line. So it's very important that the appropriate parties are involved and made aware of behaviors, symptoms, behavior plans, things like that. It's very, very important. Follow the behavior management plan, the safety plan for the child. Respect boundaries. Develop that trust with the kids. Do not confront unnecessarily. Separate from other children when necessary. If you see that they're being a common threat or problem, separating them, but making sure to address it, making sure to deal with that. Don't be passive and don't just let that go like if it never happened. It's important to address it every time. And it can be very, very exhausting, as it is for parents in discipline, constantly going over it, constantly talking about it again, even if you know that they know that it's wrong. Sitting down with them, explaining it, talking to them, really, really, it's always the same procedure. Every time that you get caught stealing, there's going to be a consequence. The same way verbally. Every time that a child is disrespectful or something, address it. There has to be a consequence. Every time for bad behavior, even if it's just verbal, don't let it go. Talk to them. Show them that you care. And address it. And so attempt to engage in acceptable activities. A lot of times, let's say that for whatever you're not able to, it's not possible right now. You're going to do it later, but right now you can't just separate that child and talk to them, and you can't do all of that. You can't do it right now. Yes, eventually you get to it, but if you have a bunch of kids, you don't have other staff, and you're in corresponding ratio, of course you don't leave your other kids. You're going to just address it later, but you're not going to forget about it. You're going to be within acceptable activities for the child, and you're going to continue redirection. Redirect. If they're having a tantrum, whatever it takes to redirect and allow them to be healthy in the group. And then later on you deal with it, but don't forget about it. Okay? So contact emergency personnel and your supervisor immediately if there's a serious threat or physical violence. Substance abuse. Unexplained changes in behavior. A lot of times these kids are going to schools and getting drugs at school. They're getting high at school. Okay? Irritability, excessive or not enough sleep, secretive, sneaky behaviors, lying or stealing, missing curfew, refusal to provide whereabouts. And so, unexplained changes in behavior, you know what your kid is like normally, so all of these different behaviors and things that you see, you're going to know when something is off with your kid. A lot of times you also see the physical changes, the red eyes, the munchies, excessive coughing, changes in speech, balance and coordination difficulties, hunger, headaches, sensitivity to light and sound, reactivity. You're going to see something is off. but it's very important that you observe the children, that you take note of these things. If you really believe that a child is abusing any kind of substance, please make it known to your supervisor. They will take appropriate measures and make sure that the case manager and the therapist and everybody is involved. They do random drug testing, as well as any drug testing with probable cause, okay? So what should you do? If the child appears intoxicated, take him or her to urgent care immediately. Of course, notifying your supervisor always first. Search the home for illegal substances and remove if found. Call the police if substances are found. Follow the behavior management plan. You're going to follow whatever your supervisor instructs you. At the time, you probably won't remember all of this, but don't worry. You have a plan at home. In the homes, you have a plan, and it tells you what to do and what's the protocol, and always let your supervisor know. Make sure that you're not accusing the kid or, the child. Don't just, oh, you did this. You always ask, are you under any kind of influence? No. If you believe they're lying, okay. Just keep asking them questions. Are you under any kind of influence? Okay. Are you okay? Your eyes look red and your pupils look very dilated. Like, are you feeling okay? Like, what's going on? Asking them, are you in any possession of drugs? Do you have anything on you? And then explaining to them, look, after you speak to your supervisor and everything, I have reason, I feel something is wrong. I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay. We need to take you to the doctor. Explaining to them, and not just confiscating their stuff, but having them do it. I need you to empty out your entire book bag for me. And, eventually, like when they always getting permission first, you don't just want to attack. But, your supervisor will take those measures as well. Afterwards, I'm just giving you these details because I've seen situations happen. Like somebody will just take the book bag and start looking, and already you're breaking trust. Already you're breaking privacy. Already you're like disrespecting. And so just making this clear how everything has steps and respect and questions and protocol. Okay, there are right ways to do this. So and of course that child is not gonna like you. They're not gonna be happy with you that you found out they were doing drugs, and if that's the case. But at the end of the day, you're doing the right thing for the child, and you're doing the right thing in general. So because you care, and it's okay to tell them, you know what, I have to give you this consequence because I care. And you need to learn that everything has consequences in life. And this is preparing you for your future. So with that said, we really want to thank you. Some of you are really new and some of you have been here for years, but we want to thank you for the great work that you've been doing. It is not easy to deal with at-risk children, and it's a calling. It's a special calling, and it's very difficult. So thank you. And we want to encourage you to just continue to do your best, and with everything you've learned today, we really hope that you will be able to apply these different techniques and the knowledge that you've received here. So with that said, I wanted to open up the floor for any questions that you may have or comments. Was this training useful to you?
Yes.
It was? Okay, good. I'm glad. So if something comes up and you have more questions, feel free to reach out to your supervisor. Let your supervisor know. And if you ever want to talk to me, I'm here. I have an office in the UAC department. If you ever want to ask me specific questions, I'll schedule that with you. That's fine. I'm open. So thank you for coming today. You are dismissed.